Welcome to the Summer of Good series. I'm your host, Tim Nash. I'm on paternity leave this summer, so I've pre recorded these interviews to highlight great organizations that are making our world a better place with sustainable finance. New episodes drop every 2 weeks until the end of August. Enjoy the conversation. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today I am joined by Solène Hanquier, Head of Responsible Investments at National Bank Investments. Solène, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Tim. I'm very excited to be on your podcast.
Awesome. Now, you've been in this space of responsible investments for quite a while. I want to kind of take you back to the start and really ask you what sparked your interest in sort of starting a career in sustainable finance.
Uh, y- well, I love this question because it's really a journey how I got there. So I started my university in business administration, and when I was doing a tour at Deloitte for a potential internship, I met the sustainability team. And this was like back in 2007, and it was the first time I was hearing about sustainable development in companies. And I thought it was very interesting to like having people to enhance the sustainability practices of the company, because in our economy I do believe that we need companies, but we need companies to improve themselves every day to like manage limited resources and deal with climate change. So this is how, after my business administration bachelor, I did a master in environmental management, and then I made my way more in sustainability. And I started at the land army, actually, and then I made my way to BCE and managing the climate change strategy of Bell Canada. And from one thing to the other, at some point, I started to realize that really the way to make the most impact is really through capital. So it's really through the investment side, where you can really invest in companies where you think they're like making some changes in the world by developing solutions like clean tech or like healthcare, but also, as a shareholder, engaging with companies to make them improve their practices. So 7 years ago, I made my way in sustainable finance, and I've been working in multiple organizations since then.
Amazing. That's so cool. I mean, you've been at this for, I think, about as long as I have been, and so we've certainly seen a lot of change and growth and evolution. And it's so exciting to see the success that you've got now as head of responsible investments at National Bank Investments. And now National Bank has a big presence in Quebec. I know it well because my dad worked for National Bank Financial in London, Ontario, sort of growing up. So I knew about National Bank, but I think that the bank isn't as well known across the country. Can you tell us non-Quebecers a little bit about National Bank?
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, we're the Canadian sixth largest bank, and we are the leading one in Quebec. So it's fully known in Quebec. And like any bank, we have a full range of financial services for individual businesses, clients, and we have a range of banking and insurance servicing, and also investment and wealth management solutions. And I think you will know that we acquired Canadian Western Bank. So hopefully you'll know a little bit more about a national bank in the coming years. But we're very happy to, like have a more presence in the West and across Canada now. Maybe a fun fact about a national bank is that it was founded in 1859 by a group of businessmen in Quebec City. And really, the objective when it was created, it was to serving the interest of underserved communities. So in
Mm,
1859, underserved communities were the French-speaking communities, because at that time most of the financial services were given to the English communities. So it was really like the objective. Now it's like very more broad, but we really have an entrepreneurial as a leadership and a way of thinking. And where I sit more about national bank investments, because I guess some people don't know as well. So it's a line of business of National Bank Canada, and really we are an investment fund management firm. So we manufacture mutual funds, ETFs, other investment solutions. Today we have in our on our platform 144 funds and ETF, and we manage more than 98 billions of assets. And on these assets, we have 6 billions that are in sustainable funds and ETFs. And before we jump more on the the sustainability funds and ETF, I just want to mention that something that is different for from us, NBI, is that we operate in open architecture. So that means that
Mm.
we partner with external portfolio managers. So we have 50 firms that manage our mandates, and AlphaFix is one of the partnering firm that we have that manage the NSCB.
Yeah, so that was the green bond ETF that I had Simon on the show last week, and so we talked a lot about that national bank green bond ETF. One thing that came up during that question from the chat was making sure that people understand that these funds, these especially the ETFs, these exchange traded funds, you don't have to be a national bank client to buy them. That anybody with an online brokerage or any advisor with access to the market can buy these. So you are really, my understanding is that you're building the funds, you're working with external managers to be able to manage the funds. They're the ones who decide what to buy, what to sell, when to buy, when to sell. And then you're then selling these through your open architecture so that any advisor, any investor across the country, really even around the world, as long as you've got access to the Canadian market, can buy these funds. Do I have that right?
Yeah, maybe switch around. So basically, what we do is that we decide about the product that we want to launch, and
Yeah.
then we'll try to find the best portfolio managers for this specific strategy and mandate. So, and then we ask them, can you please partner with us and on this journey? So this is really the way it works.
Amazing. And I mean, let's talk about the sustainable funds because I think that's certainly my audience really cares about that. There are a number of ETFs that are on the market that I've been tracking. We learned about the NBI Sustainable Canadian Bond ETF on the last show. That one has almost $3 billion in management. Based on my research, I think that's the biggest sustainable ETF in Canada, from what I could see. There are also some of the other ones. I know there's a global equity and a Canadian equity one that have way more money inside them than other sustainable ETFs. Like, what are you doing differently? How are you attracting all of this money into your sustainable funds?
Yeah, thank you for this question. Maybe just as a start, before we launch the sustainable funds, I think there's a really strong conviction from National Bank Investment that, integrating ESG considerations into our investment processes makes better decision because we have more insights on potential risk and opportunities. So that's why in 2018, we started to ask our portfolio managers to integrate those considerations if it was not already done. But then in 2020, we thought that maybe some clients wanted to have more than just integration of ESG as a risk management perspective. Like some clients in their day-to-day basis, they make like they consume and make responsible choice in their philanthropic. They use environmental causes or social causes, and we thought that for some of them, it was very important as well that the left hand talks to the right hand, and that in their day to day where they invest and their money where it sits at night, it sits with companies that have the best sustainable practices and encourage companies with solutions that solve the challenges of today and tomorrow. So that's why in 2020 we started to launch sustainable funds. Now we have more than sustainable funds and ETFs, but it was really with this conviction.
Mm.
So I guess, like the magic recipe is really because we have a strong conviction at the top level of the firm. And then what we offer, we really think that it's not because it's a sustainable fund that we should have a compromise on the performance. So it's very important that when we do a project and we select a portfolio manager, there's never concessions on performance. It's the same process as traditional fund, but what we add is that we have a participation of our team to make sure that there's a financial performance, but there's also an ESG or sustainability performance in the funds. That's part of like one of the role. Maybe more on the NBI, like explaining you a little bit of the magic recipe. There's also like trainings that we've done. So like, and that's why I started the conversation before, because I was really congratulating you with the podcast. I think it's a lot of sustainable investment. It's relies on communication and education. It's a very complex. You have a talent to speak about that and make it more accessible. So for us, 2 years ago, we did follow. So a third of NBI followed a training on sustainable finance with Finance Montréal. So it's a 7 hours training of sustainable finance, and some wholesalers followed this training. So it was a training made by experts. So the wholesalers are really like the people that then can communicate and educate at the high level on the funds, on sustainability, to the advisors. So this plays a really great role. And also we are partner with different firms. If we take the example of an SCB, so AlphaFix is always there present to make presentation to some of our clients. So like they're here to explain more if it's needed. Maybe on the last point, if I take, I mentioned about the performance, but it's also, like there's a full few process that when we select a portfolio manager and when we launch a product, we really want to understand that there's a need, and like it's the best PM to manage this mandate. So that's very, very important. Lastly, why we have a lot of AUMs also. So yes, there is AUMs that are from advisors or end clients, but also NBI. We build solutions that are managed for our retail clients. So it's a solution with different risk profile. In our portfolio as well, we invest in some of the sustainable funds. So we have some sustainable funds and ETFs in those solutions.
Amazing. Amazing. So, and I think it's really helpful to kind of map people out when it comes to, what I would call the sell side of the investment business, right? So you've created this product, you've created this nice bundle, this fund. From there, you now need to educate a group of people called the wholesalers. And so these are going to be sort of higher level. My understanding is these people often have sort of territories. So you'll have wholesalers for different kind of provinces or regions of the country who then will go and educate advisors, that the wholesalers have that relationship with the advisors and will teach them, so that the advisors can then have the conversation with the retail client, with the person who's coming to them for that investment advice. Do I have that system correct?
Yeah, and I think there's also other ways that the advisors can be educated and trained, but I think that's another question. But yes, that's correct.
Amazing. That sounds right. Because I think, there is a bit of a gap in the marketplace. The Responsible Investment Association, where I think you're a board member. Do I have that
Yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I'm sure you're on top of their sort of latest research, and they just came out with an investor survey report, and that discusses a service gap between clients who want sustainable investments, that sort of end people, the investors who are just really saving for their own retirement. They want sustainable investments, but there's a gap because not enough advisors are bringing it up and being proactive. And this is something that in the industry, we've been talking about the service gap for a very long time
Yes.
right now. And so, so I assume that you sort of agree with these findings, that there is a
Hmm.
service gap. So what are you doing in your role at National Bank Investments to be able to help close that gap?
Yeah, so I'm not surprised, but I'm disappointed by the survey results because, as you mentioned, every year it's the same kind of results. So I think it's 40%. So meaning that like there's a 60% and more of the clients that would like to know more about responsible investment, but less than 30% or some 30% of advisors are talking about that. And I guess there's a variety of reason why advisors don't talk about responsible investment. Like there's confusion in the market on sustainable investments, so sometimes they don't feel comfortable to talk about that. There's also the greenwashing issues, so they prefer to not talk about that again. So I guess mainly it's because there's a lack of understanding and knowledge. Our role, as I mentioned, is that like we're trying to ask advisors, please talk about responsible investment, because you don't know what you don't know. Like you don't know, you can't assume that your client is not interested. You can't assume that your client is not interested, but maybe he's going to talk about that to his, and I'm just generalizing, but mostly women and millennials are interested by responsible investment, so they can talk about that at home. And there's something that we really and really sparks an interest in their eyes when we talk about that. It is that GD Power made a study in 2020 that shows that clients are more likely to refer advisors when advisors talk about what their firm are doing in terms of ESG. So that's what we're saying, like just talking about that, maybe the client will say, no, I'm not interested, but I'm happy that you have the offer for other clients. It's good for references of the points that we're saying. The other thing that we're doing is that I'm very vocal, for example, saying that there's so much that we can do. The wholesalers and I think, like CFA, they updated their program to add responsible investment. So, ESG is part of, and all the CFAs candidates need to learn about ESG. I really think that the trainings and programs to be a financial planners should have something on responsible investing. It should be mandatory. So right now it's voluntary, but there's tons, and not only for advisors, also for DIY investors. There are tons of resources to learn about that. So RA, you mentioned, had really good, amazing trainings on responsible investing, and it's webinar, so everybody can do it. A webinar, it's online, I mean, so you can do it by yourself on your own rhythm.
Yeah, I did that training. I got my responsible investment specialist RIS designation a few years ago. So I went through that, which is great. Definitely I've seen the CFA Institute, and that's more, I think, on the analysts, which is a little bit more on the buy side. They're kind of the data nerds, making those decisions. I've been so frustrated on the financial planning side with, I've got my CFP, I'm a certified financial planner. And I remember doing my training there, and responsible investing was literally one paragraph in,
Hmm.
a 500-page textbook. There was one small little section, and it certainly never came up on any of the exams. So, I definitely think there's a lot of work to do training the younger people coming into the market, that this really is, I think, critical understanding going forward. But I also find, I think a big part of the gap is with some of the older advisors, that, that getting someone to kind of change their ways, to learn new tricks a little bit, it is a little bit tricky. Like, and I'd be really curious, whether it's with the wholesalers or with it's the advisors, like how are they responding when you do bring this up? Are people sort of opting into this training, or are you going into spaces and kind of training absolutely everyone? Do you find that some advisors are more open-minded than others? Like, I tend to think that there is still sort of a fair bit of resistance to some of these
Hmm.
ideas.
I don't know, it's like the egg and the chicken. And I still didn't crack that. I'm still trying to figure out what's the best way to go further. Maybe I can give you some stories of advisors, for example, that now always talk about responsible investment. It's because they lost a client. So a client asked multiple advisors on, like on them, and never said anything about ESG. So the advisors didn't pitch anything about ESG. And at the end, he said, I didn't pick you because, you didn't talk about responsible investment. So, and I chose
Wow.
the other one. So from now, he's always talking, actually took the RA training courses, and now he's talking about that. And he's really talking about to advisors, like, you should definitely don't assume and talk about it. It doesn't cost more much to talk about it. The other thing that sparks an interest of advisors is also to tell them, like, you don't when you speak to a client, they don't need to put all their eggs in the same basket. They can have multiple portfolios, and they can invest in one or two sustainable funds. It doesn't need to be everything. And what really clients really like when we say, like, maybe what type of world you want to give
Mm.
to your children, and when you're opening like an account for their studies, uh, a sustainable investing maybe fit more your idea. So this is really powerful, but still trying to understand where it comes. For sure, when I speak to wholesalers, what they say, and I do agree with them, is that they don't have a lot of time to like spark interest of advisors. So they try to talk to them with the best fund solutions that they know that sparks interest. And then once they get them, they have time to talk about it. But I don't know. I don't know where. But anyways, we're trying to talk to clients, to advisors, and wholesalers. But it's very hard. It's very hard to bring it up, but slowly, and what you're doing, I think we're getting there.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it is a process. It will take time. And what I love is that you are educating throughout the entire system, right? And this is one of the reasons I wanted to chat with you is I know this focus on education and really because it does take time. I do love this idea of doing it with part of your money for people who are open to it. Like maybe their heart is open to sustainable investments, but their head, they're still a little bit like worried. It's a common myth that sustainable investments underperform, that people think they're going to sacrifice returns or lose money with it. So I've done with clients before what I call a bake off, right? Where it's like kind of like baking two pies, and we'll do the sustainable and the non-sustainable, and we'll kind of do it. And then you can track it over time. And after a year or 2 years or however long they want to go, when they see that the sustainable one does pretty much the same as the
Hmm.
original one, that's when I find the light bulb switch and there's like, okay, great. My brain is on side now. I can go with my heart and I can feel
Yeah.
good about my sustainable investments. So I do think that's a great tactic, is just to get people to, okay, let's do two different portfolios and then let's compare them over time. Do you have any advice for people who are maybe shopping around for a good values aligned advisor? Like, what are some questions, if you are talking to a couple different advisors or deciding, kind of who you do want to be working with, how can you find someone that actually is sort of values aligned rather than someone that maybe is just kind of like ticking the boxes and sort of, telling you what they think you need to hear?
Yeah, so definitely, like, I think it's important to stay true to your convictions. So, if you see, and that this is what we've been telling people, is that, like, the myth about the performance is really a myth. The performance of sustainable investing is as good as traditional investing in the long term. So just while you go with different advisors, if you see that they have a different views, maybe that's a red flag
Mm.
that you should switch advisors, because you're not here to try to convince them. Okay, so pick one that is already convinced. That's the first point. Okay, so then now you have an advisor that is not, trying to pull back on that. Then it maybe asking them what, how do they evaluate sustainable funds? What type of, are they using data that they're following? What kind of documentations they read, if they did follow some trainings. Doesn't mean, like if they didn't follow that in training, it doesn't mean that they're not good, because sometimes like you can read about that, but trying to see what expertise and tools they're using to really select sustainable funds. I think that's a very strong point, and asking them what they're using, like having proof, like can I see the performance of those sustainable funds, not only on a financial point, but more like on the ESG point, like can you show it to me? So I think that's kind of the point. What I like to say is that ESG funds are not binary. It's not like ESG fund, everything is the same. So it's important to see as well if the advisor is trying to understand what you want, because there is many different approach. So ESG funds, it's not only about exclusions. It's more than that. For some people, it's only exclusions and they'll be happy. But for some others, maybe they want to have some exposures to clean tech funds or impact investing. So it's important to see if they're like trying to understand what type of funds you want. I know some of advisors, what they're doing is that they pick a sustainable fund, and they read some of the company names, the big ones, and they wait to see if there's a reaction of
Mm.
the client. If there's a strong adverse reaction because they don't want this company, maybe it's a sign that it's not the fund, but also maybe it's a sign that you need education, because there's no perfect companies as well. So sometimes it's worth to explain, okay, I know this company is not perfect, but this is what really this is the targets that they have, for example, for on climate change. This is how they want to improve. So they're really like in the right path.
I love it. I think that's a really good approach. I mean, number one, just saying, if they assume that you're going to sacrifice returns, that right away is a clue that probably not a good fit, that they've got a mindset where they believe some of these myths, and that, you're never going to convince anyone. So I think that's a really good, that is a bit of a binary question. But then from there, there are so many products on the market right now. I talk a lot about the difference between doing less evil versus doing more good. So understanding that they also have that range, that part of it is the screening and the ESG integration and earning the market returns. But if you want a little bit of exposure to clean technologies or, impact investments, having someone that has those options available. And then even on the doing less evil side, it is such a spectrum of options. So my work over the last, decade plus with clients has been really figuring out where a client is on that spectrum, and empowering them to choose the fund that is most closely aligned with their values. And again, I think that's all anyone can ask for, is in any one solution, any one ETF. It's always going to be too sustainable for some people and not far enough for other people. So to me, it's
Hmm.
really about having those more nuanced conversations, and having someone that can really listen to you to figure out where you are on that spectrum and what your expectations are, and then can help you understand the options that are available to you. So I really
Hmm.
love that approach.
I did hear you talking in a conference a few years ago, and I really like the image you were saying about a pie. You cannot invest only in pack investing, for example, right now, because there's not enough choices. But you can have a little bit of exposure of in pack investing, so it's like the cherry on the top of the pie, and then you have the cream that is thematic
Yeah, that's it.
investment, and then you have the feeling that is fixed income and equity that has a sustainable way. But if you invest only in clean tech fund, then like in terms of diversification, you can't put all your eggs in that. So it's good to have some of that if it's something that is of interest of you. But yeah, I really like the way you explained that.
That's great. Yeah, people love my pie analogy. But really, the idea is that, bonds are like the crust of your pie, very safe and secure. Stocks are the filling. That's really why we eat pie, is for the filling. The reason we invest is for stocks, those higher returns. And that doing less evil approach which is very much the pie, the sort of the stocks and the bonds there. And then the thematic approach, which might be something like clean technology or water, that's really the icing on top, or the whipped cream or the ice cream. You don't need that, but a lot of people, they come to me, they want to invest in clean tech. So I spend a lot of time telling people, no, 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 don't put all of your money into new emerging technologies. That's really the, whipped cream on top. And then the cherry on top are these impact investments, things like community bonds, or, the really sort of crunchy granola side of things, maybe a little bit of angel investing. These things are going to be a little bit different. So you really just want that as the cherry on top. It's yeah, I really love, people's reaction to that. I think that it's been really helpful.
Yeah, so basically, that's what we're seeing and saying to advisors.
Fantastic. Well, I've got one last question for you before I let you go, because we do have a prime minister that just won. Mark Carney is now, he was prime minister before, but got reelected as prime minister, and he's got a very deep knowledge of sustainable finance. And I think some of us in the industry are a little bit excited that we kind of have a sustainable finance nerd as prime minister right now. So, my question to you is sort of what's on your policy wish list? If you could, speak to Mark Carney and ask him and to, make Canada a global leader in sustainable finance, what are your big ideas, Solène?
Um, well, I will be very conservative with my big idea because what is happening in the US, we need to ask a little bit for less, but very, like because focus on the national security, but maybe we'll have more success, like aiming for less, but really strong wish list. So the first one is to finally release the taxonomy that we're all waiting for. And it's kind of a running joke now to ask for that after so many years. Taxonomy is very important and could be a competitive advantage also for Canada to really understand what we define as being green investments, but also transition energy. So, because like we are a resource intensive country, and if we show the world that our sectors that are resource intensive are making a lot of work to reduce their footprint, I think that will be sensational for Canada. So that's really the first point that I would love to see, is to have a taxonomy, and for like our sustainable investing funds, that will be like awesome to invest following this kind of taxonomy. There is a taxonomy already in Europe. We saw one in Australia. Um, it's time for Canada to release their taxonomy. So that's the first point. And the second point is to push on the disclosures. We talked a little bit about greenwashing, but it's very hard right now, and we're getting better and better with to disclose on the ESG performance of sustainable funds, because companies right now are in Canada, for example, are disclosing voluntary their ESG performance, but it's still involuntary. On the TSX, you have more than 80% of the companies that are disclosing their sustainability report with key metrics. But we would like to see the disclosures to be fully aligned with international recognized ISSSB, so sustainability disclosures, and um, make it obligatory for companies in Canada. That will be very helpful for investors when they invest in companies, to help them to take the ESG criteria into considerations and be able to compare one company to the other company. So that's my second wish. And my third wish is to push for, an energy mix, push for innovative solutions for our energy security in Canada, and maybe like we can share energy with the world. So clean energy, but also push for a better oil and gas industry, like continuing their reduction of their footprint.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really think the first two I would say are more to play catch up, developing the taxonomy. You mentioned the ISSB. I believe that's the International Sustainability Standards Board. I think I have that right, where, these are sort of some internationally recognized standards. Hey, like, let's play catch up. Let's make that mandatory in Canada to be able to disclose according to those sort of international standards. And then, yeah, I really think this notion of, what is Canada's energy future? It seems to me that people are accepting that oil and gas isn't going away anytime soon. For me, I'm very sad with that psychology, because I think it does, potentially really almost doom our kids to a changing climate. At the same time, there are sort of economic realities that we certainly can't ignore. So I think having a pretty big adult conversation there. But to me, it really is, there's such an opportunity for Canada in terms of financing renewable energy. I really think that this is something we've been so good at in our history, is financing traditional energy, financing mining projects. We have such great knowledge here in the financial sector. I would love for us to see, for us to become a global leader in a clean energy financing. That would just mean the
Hmm.
world to me.
And we see this in China, right? They're investing so much right now in renewable energy for their country. So I think it's good. I also, like, let's not put all of our eggs in the same basket, and try to be more, have more types of energy and push for it.
Absolutely. Diversifying our energy economy, I think, is a great message right now. Solène, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so grateful for you just coming on the show, but also for the work that you do and the volunteer work that you do in the sustainability space. You are really someone who is helping kind of develop this ecosystem and take it to the next level. So I'm just so grateful for you and everything that you're doing.
Thank you, Tim, and it was a pleasure for me to be at your podcast. Thank you for the invitation.
Awesome. A bientôt. Bye bye.
Bye.
Such a fun episode. A sincere thank you to our guests. Links we discussed are below. A huge thank you to Yamini Cohen for producing the Summer of Good series and making us all sound great. And to you, thank you so much for listening, for being here, and for sticking around till the end. As I've mentioned, this series was recorded ahead of time while I'm on paternity leave, taking some quiet and probably loud moments with my growing family. But it means a lot to know that these episodes are reaching you while I'm away. If you're looking for support with your sustainable investments, there are still some good ways to stay connected. Want to explore DIY sustainable investing? Join the Good Investing Classroom. You can share your thoughts and questions or check out my courses. I'll be checking in there from time to time this summer, and you'll also have the support of the Good Investing community. If you have no interest in doing it yourself, reach out to Daryl Brown at Genis Capital Management. He'll look after you and your money. With any luck, I'll be back to one-on-one meetings in September for new and existing DIY clients. Thanks again for being here. It truly means the world. Until next time, take care, and I hope you're having a wonderful summer of good.